And when we say DRS, who better to look at than look at the man in front of our screen, Simon Taufel. So very welcome to my show called the DRS. How are you feeling to be on the show?
Ashwin, a great experience. I think at the moment we're all sort of technologied out. We've got a little bit of digital fatigue, but it's great to see you face to face as we are in this virtual world.
As I mentioned before, it is about DRS, right? We all make not decisions only on the field like you are aware of, but we make decisions off it as well. What has been one of the biggest decisions you've made in your life when you started off?
Well, apart from putting this hat on at the start of this session, that was a big decision for me to do that. My wife would say, and it's probably something I haven't shared publicly with too many people, but it took me a long time to make the big decision to marry my wife, Helen. We actually went out for nearly 9 years, Ash, nearly 9 years before I made the decision and committed to the decision of asking my wife to marry me. And so for me, that was a big decision. Another big decision I had very early on in my career off the field about just life was I was doing a university course at the University of Technology in Sydney. I was doing a Bachelor of Business degree, majoring in marketing. And after a year of not liking the course, I had to make a big decision to actually walk away from it. And What happens if I don't do this? And I was only playing golf with a good mate the other day who's contemplating leaving the printing industry and actually retiring and doing something different. And I said to him, well, what happens if you don't make this decision? Are you happy to keep doing what you're doing and feeling the way you're feeling? He said, no, I'm not. I don't like my job anymore. I don't like what I'm doing. I feel as though I need to make a change. And I said, well, there's your answer then. Your gut tells you what to do. And so when I'm making decisions on the cricket field, like you do as a bowler, you know, what's my plan here? What am I going to do? What does your gut tell you? Because I think that's the really important thing, that inner voice inside of you that gives you that, I need to do something here. I've got to trust myself way of operating is. And some of us are very high risk takers. You know, we don't have a problem with taking lots of risk. And some of us are very conservative. And some of us are somewhere in between. So they're the two extremes, you know. And if you look at when you invest, normally your financial advisor will try to find out what sort of profile type of investor are you? Are you a high risk investor? So high risk, high return, but also potentially big losses. Or you're a very conservative type of personality where, you know, you don't want to risk a lot, but your returns won't be as high. And our decision-making processes accordingly are quite different. So for a high-risk person, chances are they may often act very impetuously without really thinking it through, and they'll follow that instinct or that gut. And, you know, when it comes off, it really comes off. Like cricketers, you know, some cricketers are very natural. They don't need a lot of coaching or strategy advice. They can sort of sense and feel what's going to happen. And we would describe them as probably having a great cricket brain. You know, so people like Darren Lehman, Shane Warne, for me, are people that just have great cricket brains. But then there are other people that may not be naturally gifted in that area, and they've really got to work on that. And they've got to sort of, you know, plan it, step it through, and think about the process, and you know, sort of take a lot more time to actually get there. So for me, I don't classify myself as a natural umpire, where I've worked with umpires who are very natural, and it sort of just comes to them like that. It just flows, it just happens. For me, I feel as though that I've got to spend a lot more time in preparation, a little bit more analysing, and a little bit more of that step by step by step. And, you know, let's follow a process here. And if we follow the process, the outcomes will be okay. So it's a bit of personality to start with. And it's a bit of self-awareness about what you feel comfortable with and what sort of individual you are. And then learning to trust yourself, and then knowing which one of these that you really need to follow. Does that sort of make sense to you?
It makes a lot of sense. And that's why I'm actually enjoying it as you're saying it. You spoke about something called flow, right? Where you said it naturally flows. For example, a Shane Warne bowling or a Darren Lehman playing as cricket. It's very natural. So for them to make a decision on the cricket field, it's quite natural, which is exactly what you were saying. So let's just review this on the other side. You made a decision. Making decisions in life might not be necessarily straightforward, because for a lot of them, decisions directly proportionate to their livelihoods, but they do need to make decisions, right? So what do? You make the decision, step into it and review it, or you review it well in advance and say, okay, hey, you know what? Instead of making the decision, I'll back off. So is it more to say what the society throws at you, or just about yourself? Can you confine yourself?
Yeah, look, Ash, it's a really great, good question. It's really fascinating to think this one through, because from an umpiring perspective, when we make a very quick decision, so if you're bowling from my end and you go, how's that? And I go like that, what's the perception?
You're not thinking much at all, right? You just go through it instinctively.
I haven't thought about it. I haven't really processed it. Quick decision, probably wrong. Haven't really solved it. And then if you go, how's that? And I go, what's the perception there?
I'm thinking probably Simon thought about what are the bad deeds I did to him and then decided whether to give me out or not. That's what I'm thinking when you did that.
Exactly right, Ash. So when you make a snap decision or you take too long in context, there is a perception that the decision is not going to be right. So what's really important, I think, is from a decision point of view, is you are very consistent in your process and you try to fit in with what makes you comfortable. Now, you were talking about, let it flow. From a decision-making perspective, when I make a mistake, and I've made a few, and I've made a couple of mistakes against you, and you know that.
Everybody makes them, Simon. We do.
But like all decisions and like all mistakes, and even like the good ones, you need to go back and you think about, well, why did I get that one right? And that's great. But why did I get one wrong? And of course, human beings being the way we are, we tend to spend more time with the ones that we get wrong than we do with the ones we get right, because people expect us to make right decisions. So whether it's choosing the right thing off the menu for your wife or your girlfriend, or whether it's choosing the right car for the family, people expect you to make the right decision. So when you do something right, there's very little sort of analysis or debrief around that decision. When you get something wrong, of course, that sticks with you for ages. And we then tend to overthink it, Ash. So sometimes we can spend too long overthinking a decision, and that's what's called procrastination. Should I do this? Should I do that? I can't decide on the colour. Oh, that's fuel economy is not real great. That's too expensive, and all of a sudden it becomes really complicated. So how do we make decision making as simple as possible? And how do we know what to look for? So when I'm making a decision off the field in my area of expertise, or on the field in my area of expertise, I should know what are my cues as to what I'm looking for. If I'm trying to buy a house, which we did a few years ago, we sit down and we say, okay, what are the non-negotiables? What are the things that we must have?
Yeah.
And then what are the things that we would like to have that aren't deal breakers? And then you will make the best decision based on what you've got available. So when I make a decision, I try to think less and do more. Because when we think about stuff too much, particularly up here in the brain, is we don't actually see it for clarity. It all gets muddled up, jumbled up, when we go off on various tangents. What if I do that? What if I don't do this? What about that? What's she going to say? What's he going to do? Will they validate my decision? All those sorts of, it becomes very complicated. And you end up doing nothing. It's almost like, oh, gee, I don't know what to do here. Gee, the appeal was okay. Lots of people are waiting for me to make a decision. Okay, give it out. So you need to get into this process where you know what to look for, you know what's important, and you think less and do more. And from a cricket analogy, when you are thinking less and doing more, you're in that performance zone. You're not watching the scoreboard. You don't care what's happened last. You don't care what's happened next. You're just in the zone. I know what to do here. This is the decision I'm going to make. I'm going to do this, or I'm going to make that call. So think less, do more.
Right. There's one takeaway for me from what you said. That's the pros and cons, right? When you bought a house, when you buy a car, fuel efficiency, you need a garden, you need so many bedrooms or whatever it is. So when you're making a decision, like in cricket with DRS, right? You're looking for whether the impact is in line, where's the ball pitching, and whether it's striking the stumps. These are the three.
That's right. Yep.
These are the three parameters you're looking for in making a decision on the field. So likewise, what would you suggest? How much would gut feel play a role when making a decision? Would you say that there are these parameters and then gut feel values so much? Is there anything that you can weigh out?
It depends what you can see and what you can. Sometimes we might not be able to get all the information, and sometimes we might have to make I won't say a guess, but I'll say an educated guess.
Right.
So with an LBW decision, there may be one element of that I haven't seen, because the ball's gone behind the bat. So I actually haven't seen the point of impact. So off your bowling, for example, to a right-hand batsman, if the ball's coming in between bat and pad, and then the bat keeps going out in front, I might not actually get to see the point of impact. So what are the other pieces of information that I've got to work with? And then I'll form a decision based on what my gut tells me. It just looks out, or it just looks like it's outside the off stump. And because you still got to make a decision. Gone are the days in today's world where we can give the benefit of the doubt. That doesn't exist in cricket anymore. And so if you take that off field, sometimes you've got to make a decision that you might not have all the information available. You see, the best decisions are made when we have all the information available. So the question would be, can I get more information? And if the answer is yes, then proceed, go and get the more information. But if you can't, and they need an answer now,
right,
then what are you going to do? You're going to use that gut feel, aren't you?
So what I'm hearing loud and clear is whether you're sure or not, you will have to make a decision, right? Some people putting it away in whatever case, in the fear of it might not working, is definitely not on as far as whatever you're saying is concerned. Now, just drawing a line from there about what's happened in your own career. You were really blossoming. You were one of the best umpires in the world. And then all of a sudden you gave up umpiring. How did you come up with that decision? How did that happen? Was it very easy for you, or you had to make the decision? How was it like?
Well, it's probably, I think it's the second last chapter in my book. I think it's called Use by Date. And for me, there was no one thing, Ash, that made me decide that my time is now to stop up at the international level. It was a process. It was a series of events. It was, in that chapter, I talk about there are professional reasons and there were personal reasons. But there was no one thing that really tipped me over. But I think when you talk about what you want to do as a career choice, my advice to young people particularly, and it's for everyone though, is to do what you love and to love what you do. Because it shouldn't seem like a job to you. Your career should not seem burdensome. You should enjoy what you do. And if you're passionate about what you do, chances are you're going to be very, very good at it, because it's not going to seem like work, and you're going to put extra effort in it without actually being told to do it or trying to do it. So that was the first thing, is that I actually started to develop a passion for coaching and training and performance development that was more fun than standing out in the middle, standing at your end, putting the finger up or making mistakes or getting them right. And as funny as that seems, I really felt that my role in cricket was taking a different direction. I actually enjoyed another aspect of performance coaching, training, helping others, than standing in the middle of a cricket ground for 5 days in 40-degree heat with lots of people telling me how I was going. So there was that aspect. And the other, the sort of the personal side was, it became harder to leave home with 3 kids, with my wife. I noticed earlier in this session that you had some domestic help going through the background there. Not really that fortunate in this country to be able to afford and have a workable scenario there. But, I felt that it was time for my wife to be able to have a career or to help out around the house. And so under these COVID-19 situations, I've been doing the cleaning, I've been doing the cooking, I've been taking the kids to school, I've been picking them up, doing the laundry, all that sort of thing. So it's funny, Helen and I were only talking about this the other day, is that the roles are reversed. She goes out to work and I stay home and take care of the house.
In fact, Simon, on this show, I'm going to give you a secret away. Why do you think I'm running this show? Because if I didn't run that, I would be doing that. So I said, I am working and I got somebody to work for me. Right. Anyway, on a lighter note, and just moving on, Simon. See, sometimes there are these, you're aware, you do a lot of work in India. You're very aware of how the young minds in India think like, right? So if, for example, you make a decision, in cricket, it's instantaneous, right? If the batsman, for example, no batsman or a bowler accepts a decision an umpire gives, right? So they immediately have a chance of reviewing it and say, go up, let's have a look, let's contest this. How do you think a youngster must deal with it? He makes a decision. How long should he persevere? When does he review the decision and when does he go back or forward?
Well, that's a difficult question to ask because it really depends upon the person. However, I mean, I gave you that story, that example of me going to university, putting a year into a 3-year course and then making that tough decision that I don't like it and I need to do something different. And I paid a lot of money for that course and I developed a fairly sizable debt. And to walk away from that decision, it's like you admit fault or you admit a mistake. But what if you don't? So that's the question I asked you before. What if you know the decision's wrong, you feel the decision's wrong, but you choose to do nothing about it? And you then have to then go through that. And I think then you feel uncomfortable. For me, I feel like I would not like that decision. Basically, I think two wrongs don't make a right. If you've made a wrong decision to start with, and then you've reached a decision where you don't like it and you want to do something else, but then you decide, no, I don't want to do that. In my mind, you're actually making the same mistake again. You've made two mistakes, and that doesn't make it okay. So I think it takes a lot of humility. It takes a lot of vulnerability. It takes a lot of courage. Courage is something that I think young people really need to probably grasp and show some really strong feelings here and actually be prepared to admit a mistake. So as you said, I spent a lot of time in India. The culture there for me is really where you do not want to admit mistakes in front of other people. It's very humiliating to do that in front of your peers. Now imagine I make a mistake in front of millions of people, which I've done a few times, you know, and that's part of the job, it's part of what we do. We make decisions every day.
Yeah.
But I would love the young people of India to have the strength and the courage of conviction that when they know something's not right, that they've got the courage to have that difficult conversation with mum and dad, or they've got that difficult conversation strength to have that with their employer or with a colleague and say, I saw you take something over there that doesn't belong to you. That's not right. Call it out. But do that in a way that's respectful. Do that in a way that doesn't, treat people poorly. But, for me, the standard you walk past is the one you're prepared to accept. And if you're not prepared to correct a wrong decision yourself, then why would you expect someone else to do that?
It's wonderful that you say that. You can't walk past something and expect the standard to be better when you are walking through it, right? It's so beautifully put, Simon. I can't even tell you how well you put that. Diving forward from that question, I wanted to. You said it takes a lot of courage to review it, right? So let me just give you an example of what I went through in my career and ask you to dissect for me, because I'm the bowler and you're the umpire. You need to do it for me. I enrolled myself into engineering. My mom and dad wanted me to be an engineer. I knew nothing. I knew nothing about what I was getting into. And when I got into it, I finished my couple of years and it just moved on. I was playing cricket. And all of a sudden, things became very difficult, from the university side from the third year.
Yeah.
So there was this whole call from my college side saying, why don't you quit? You don't have to do engineering and play cricket. Then in my own head, I was going through a very, very difficult time at college and playing cricket. It was very difficult to manage. And then I kept blaming my parents saying, you put me into it. But then I turned around and said, you know, what options do I have? I don't want to quit it here. Then I don't have a degree in my hand. The odds are that I will not come out of this and do another 3 years of another course here. So I might as well bite the bullet and just went through the ride. You know, so is there something that people can learn, or I myself can learn from it? Was it the right decision, the wrong decision?
Well, if I was coaching you, Ashwin, the first question I'd say is, what do you think? Because you've got the answer. You know your game better, and you know what you want more than I would. So if I was coaching you through this, I'd be asking you lots of questions like I was asking my golfing mate the other day. What happens if you don't?
My only answer to that, Simon, was the only reason I decided to go ahead and finish it then and there was because if I did it, it would be over in 4 years. But if I didn't, I would have to go again and spend another 3 years. I thought time was very important and I was catching up with time.
So what have you done with that? What have you done with that degree now?
I think I came out richer because it made me much more stronger mentally. Sorry?
Did you become an engineer?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay. And do you enjoy being an engineer?
I don't practice my engineering today, but I would think whatever I learned in my college put me in good stead through my cricketing career.
Yeah. Look, I think you used some interesting words there when you were telling that story about quitting. And quitting has a stigma attached to it. And no one likes to see a quitter. I would turn that on its head a little bit and say, to make a decision to change rather than quit and to do something different depends upon the reasons. Why are you leaving that and starting something different? So the language is important for me. I wouldn't see that as quitting. I would see that as acknowledging that perhaps you're not happy and you want to do something else that's more important. And I think that's why I would be very careful about the language that I'd be using would be. So I wouldn't call you a quitter. A 4-year degree would show that you are committed. And I think that shows resilience and it shows perseverance. And as an employer, that's a good quality to have. The fact that you didn't like the course would probably reflect itself in the results of how you did in the course. So you may not have done as well in that course compared to another course that you did that you just loved and you wanted to do and were prepared to go that extra mile that I talked about before. So I would expect that your dissatisfaction and lack of enjoyment with the course probably had some effect in some areas. But as you say, you can look back with pride to say that at least I pushed through and I got there.
I think the reason I didn't enjoy this as much as I did was because as much as I could have was because I was playing cricket and I liked it more than this. And somehow I wanted to be on the cricket field rather than being on the, being in the college, doing what it took. So,
but as a parent though, Ash, I think it's important that you've got something behind you, that you've got something to fall back on, because sport is high risk and everyone would love their boy or girl in India to play for their country, so that's aspirational, but it's, as you know, it's very high risk. For every 300,000 kids, there's probably one that gets through to play for their state. So it's very high risk. But you're a parent too, and this will be an interesting discussion for you when your children get to that age. And if I go down a couple of levels and I ask you the question, do you want your children to be happy?
Of course I would, yeah.
Okay. So if they came to you and said, I'm going to choose a career path because it makes me happy, but that doesn't fit in with what you want them to do, how would that make you feel?
As of now, I have a very blank slate in front of me because they're young, point number one. And point number two, if they said this would make me really happy, I'd probably try and see from my vision and give them the pros and cons and let them make the decision, because that's been how I have evolved because of what I've gone through.
Sure, and I think that's a really interesting point to really pass on to other people, is that sometimes we can't make decisions for other people, and probably we shouldn't try to make decisions for other people. What we can do though is support them through the decision-making process and say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Have you explored the options? What happens if you don't do this? What happens if you do? And get back to that blank piece of paper and look at the pros and the cons. And then it's not about the length of the list. sometimes it's about which ones are more important than others. It's a bit like that choice with the houses, you know. So the size of the bedrooms might be more important than the size of the garage, you know, or whether we don't have a garage at all, you know. So there are elements on that pros and cons list that you might only have one con, but that con is massive. It's a deal breaker compared to all the pros.
So you believe finally that instinct and the gut feel plays a massive role in decision making?
Well, it can do if you don't have a lot of the information, and you've got to trust yourself that you're comfortable in making the decision, that you haven't gone real quick and you haven't taken an age to make the decision, but you've got to feel comfortable with it, and you don't feel pressurized into the decision. You know, you feel, you know, we make the best decision at the moment in time based on what's in front of us, but you've got to make a decision.
Right. So guys, thank you so much, Simon. It's been wonderful to be talking to you about decision making, because I don't think there is any better person to be doing this. But I just want a reminder to go through the viewers that are watching this. What Simon has said is decision making is important. Pros and cons are important. Breaking through the deal, instinct plays a massive role in weighing it forward. How big the pros and cons are. And finally, make a decision, not like Billy Bowden, nor like Rudy Kurtzen, but make it like Simon Taufel. It cannot be slow death, or it cannot be too quick. Weigh in the options, allow your instinct to make a decision as well. Have I summed it up well, Simon?
Very good, Ash. Yeah, very good. You could become an umpire one day, I think.
No, not as of now, because I think there are a lot of good umpires going. It's time for me to just do DRS with the umpires. That's where I see it.
Look, Ash, I'd like to probably put a sort of a top on that a little bit by saying, the more decisions we make, the more mistakes we're going to make. And mistakes are part of umpiring, and mistakes are part of life. And you know, with kids, the biggest learning that they will make is making a mistake. And if I can give you another quick story about one of your children that might be trying to learn how to ride a bicycle. So they're really trying hard. They fall off. What do? You encourage them to get back on the bike. You talk to them in a very supportive manner. You don't have a go at them for making mistakes or getting something wrong. You know, you need to support people through decision making and realize that we all make mistakes. That learning is all about making mistakes. And if we're not making mistakes, we're not learning. Now, as parents and as coaches or as leaders or as managers, we want to make sure that our people make small mistakes and that they don't repeat the mistakes.
You spoke about the bicycle. I can't help but extend this, because when I rode a bicycle when I was young, my dad, if I fell down, stopped me from riding the bicycle. Okay. But I learned from that. And today, when my daughter falls off, I pick her up and put her on the bicycle again and say, you know, ride safely and ride efficiently. You know, that's the learning. That's what happens with generations too.
That's right. And we've learned so much from our parents because they're role models. And while some of that might be good role modeling, some of it might be not so good role modeling. And you will say to yourself, I liked what I saw in my mother and father, and I will do that with my children. And there are some things that I didn't like with my mother and father that I will do differently with my children. So it's almost like sometimes we learn what not to do is just as important as what to do.
So before we wind up, can we safely say good quality parenting enables the child to make better decisions in life?
Well, again, if it's a good example, you know, if parents are role modeling around, you know, being patient, being supportive, acceptance of mistakes, you know, so if I make a DRS mistake, I've got to learn to accept that mistake, to move on, to be getting back into that moment of here and now where I can just focus on the next ball. If parents are acknowledging good decision process, so tell me how you got to that decision. What did you consider? What haven't you considered? If parents can do those sorts of things and they can role model mistakes are okay, good decision-making process, and acknowledging good effort, I think that would be something to learn from.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Simon. You've been a wonderful guest and as always put across your thoughts in a very spiritual and very balanced manner. Thank you so much, Simon, for joining me on DRS.
Dhanyawad, shukriya, Nandri.
Thank you, Simon.